Chapter 25. Dante's goal here was pretty simple. He couldn't be here physically all the time to lay the groundwork, but this quantum computer could handle anything he needed to since it came with an advanced system AI. The AI within was not as advanced as the one in the brain chips, but it was enough to surpass anything that the humans of this Earth could picture in their movies and TV shows. Not to mention that was only the base AI. Depending on the user's necessity, child AI with custom uses could be easily created and run at the same time as long as you supplied enough power. This was why the miniature nuclear reactor was needed. AI of this level could obviously not be powered by a wall socket. In doing so, Dante would destroy every power plant linked to his apartment and damage the mini quantum computer due to lack of power on startup. The mini nuclear reactor was good enough. It had a high power output enough to maintain constant use of the quantum computer without external input, since the system was endlessly renewable and produced next to no waste that if the people of the eternal universe were comfortable enough to let children play with it. You know that its hazard rating was extremely low. Dante plugged the mini quantum computer into the main port, and it came to life immediately. He could tell because space seemed to warp around it slightly and bent the area around his table like a model's poorly done Photoshop to increase the size of her assets. Not only that, the quantum computer connected to his AI chip and registered him as its user. This meant that even if Dante gave this to anyone else, without an AI chip and a citizen ID, they could not use this thing. Dante allowed the base AI to maintain a supervisory role while he created child AI. The first one was the student AI, which would connect to Earth's internet using his name and sign up for plenty of online courses where he didn't have to show his face. Even if he did, the child AI could easily replicate a 3D model of him on screen that looked lifelike, like a VTuber sort of thing, but infinitely more perfect. As for the courses, there were many universities that were online and gave out such courses, some with cheap fees to gather money, and some with high fees because they had accreditation that was actually worthwhile. Dante didn't care about that though. The AI was just to stake as many courses on diverse scientific topics over the next few months and then excel in them greatly. That way, he would build up knowledge with ease. The second child AI was the tycoon AI, which was to make him rich. Dante did not plan to take his shabby degrees earned by the student AI to find a job, and that would be pointless. The schools that offered these courses were cheap in the first place because no respectable company would hire graduates of such a thing. So he would have to set up his own labs in his own name and be his own main researcher. Luckily, in America of today, one did not need much to set up a lab except to follow the safety guidelines, acquire the relative permits, buy the equipment, and hire the necessary staff. In fact, most applied science-related graduates would tell you that the hardest part about setting up a lab was the bloody money, because acquiring the machines and tools needed to run the experiments cost a heckload of money. Obviously, the tycoon AI was on that. How it would make money was by doing various internet jobs that were short and quick payout, like art commissions. With a quantum-level AI, you could be sure it could generate a whole anime series of top-notch quality based on a 20-word prompt in any substyle you want. So mere commissions were nothing. The AI would also write web novels and upload them to certain platforms that paid well for them. No organic author could beat its chapter upload speed and mechanical accuracy, so it could have hundreds of chapters out in a day, but obviously it would be best to tone it down to make it realistic. The tycoon AI would also develop games of all genres, from 2D anime-like games similar to Danganronpa, to 3D anime games like Genshin Impact, to 3D realistic games like The Sims. It could code anything in seconds and produce all the assets itself with slight training. What you thought the tycoon AI would do, think like hack banks, play with the stock market, and steal money covertly from the rich. That was too naive and cliché. Not to mention, it was not solving the issue of acquiring clean and irrefutable money. Working internet jobs like this was the only way to quickly amass money with clean electronic traces without working a physical day job. That's why so many people do it. Even if the Pentagon, the CIA, the FBI, the other governmental agencies of America, and even the other big countries wanted to descend on Dante once he released some of his findings, they would be left speechless. The boy was from a good family, and his grades all his life were above average. No offenses, a very clean sex life that could not be turned into blackmail from false rape accusations, nor any illegal drug use. The boy was just a socially adept, handsome nerd. How do you deal with someone like that? They'd be more likely to believe he was a natural genius that awakened later than any foul play. After all, it wasn't impossible for him to gather such skills given that his mother was a chemical engineer, so there were some science genes in him. The third and final AI was to perform the task of assimilation and qualification, called the genius AI. This AI would publish some papers in various science journals that were very groundbreaking and near to the truth, but not enough to give others the boots they needed to get there ahead of him. Its job was basically to make his name rise to fame among the world of scientists, making even the best of the best known that there was a rising kid who seemed to be enlightened by the god of science himself. The reputation was necessary because if he opened his lab and officially published his results, the first pushback would be among the science community. They are responsible for a lot of the great technological progress we have made, but as stated, the human element stains everything. Hubris grows where intellect flourishes, and it festers evermore. None of the older scientists are subconsciously willing to accept that some brat from somewhere suddenly got up and solved the problem they had been stumped with for years, and so they would hinder it. It didn't even matter if they took a look and felt like this was the truth. They would refuse to see the positives and only see the negatives, then exaggerate them. However, if Dante had built up his rep as a wonder kid close to the truth, some may not even go against him. He might even have some fans among the older folks because scientists respect anyone who can truly enlighten them and make them marvel that in essence, the goal was to change. Where did this arrogant brat come from? Where are his qualifications? To if it's that stellar young man, then it might be likely. After setting them up, Dante stood back and saw that everything was beginning to run smoothly. The quantum computer obviously did not need plugs or ports. It could connect to any network just like his chip. The tycoon AI would take over Dante's accounts and debts and pay what needed to be paid while gathering the fines. The student AI would take his credentials from his schools and then act like him, studying online, and the genius AI would contact various journals with his minor breakthroughs and build credibility as well as fame. Seeing that everything was set, Dante was satisfied. There was also the mother AI to supervise anything and maintain the set of extensive rules and commands Dante had input to be the baseline. It could be seen that in the time Dante was away, this small black box could turn the world upside down and do things no human would think possible. But funny enough, that would only be the tip of the iceberg. Dante stepped back and nodded to himself before teleporting to the eternal universe. When he appeared, he was in his bedroom, still seated in the place he left. Obviously, nothing had changed since he only spent a few minutes away, and Dante finally felt the fatigue that came with completing so many objectives in a short period of time that he sighed and had his exosuit sink into his flesh as he preferred to sleep with little clothing on. As such, the young man lay on his comfortable bed and set the room to resemble his childhood bedroom before going to sleep. Chapter 26 Orientation 1 Ads by PubFuture. Dante woke up suddenly, feeling like he was late for something. However, his AI chip reported that he had no pending engagements except the orientation at 7 a.m., and it was only 5 a.m. He rubbed his face and entered the bathroom to soak in the tub for a few minutes before coming out. He simply willed his exosuit to come out of his flesh, and his attire reformed around him, being the jacket, shirt, pants, and boots that formed his vice admiral's uniform. After checking himself out in the mirror, Dante decided to head out and reach the location of the orientation early. Luckily, there was a private teleporter right in front of his room, so he stepped into it and was given access to the destination he sought, the assembly hall. Still, Dante did not directly teleport over right away. After all, one thing about the Eternal Academy was that the teleporters did not give you full access to all exits, nor did it download the map of all such entrances and exits to your chip automatically like public teleporters. Rather, you only had access to those that were given to you at the time. As far as Dante was aware, he currently only had 3, the spaceport, the assembly hall, and his residence. He naturally guessed that he would receive more, if not the rest, after orientation was completed. Whatever the case, he arrived at the campus area quite easily after taking a quick transit vehicle. After stepping back from the teleporter after careful thought, for these quick transit vehicles, it was a fact that the entire Eternal Academy had a lot of them, and they made many students, as well as workers, use them. It would seem like, in this academy, access to teleporters was a luxury. Dante would not be too surprised if it were even treated as some form of a status symbol, used by students and workers here to show how different they were from the rest. Dante put it in mind to restrain how often he used it in order not to attract hatred. It might seem like he was overreacting, but anyone who had worked in an office space, or with coworkers, knew how easy it was for another person to hate you. You could be a nice person, and because of that, someone hated you. You could be tall and handsome, and because of that, someone hated you. You could be favored by the boss because you were hardworking, and because of that, someone hated you. It wasn't that Dante wanted to live in fear of other people's dislike, but that usually, people could do very dangerous and stupid things out of hatred. Avoiding flaunting his usage of teleporters was such a small sacrifice for peace of mind at least, until he was sure that the consequence of a random person's hate-filled actions could not affect him negatively. At that point, why would he hold back? The campus was large and expansive. He came from the residential side, and even there, he was allocated his own residence in a sort of villa-like area. Behind the assembly hall's gates was a bustling school area with hundreds of different species walking about. What was interesting, though, was that while everyone was wearing diverse clothing and attires, they all had distinct color-coded badges placed on their clothes. Probably something to distinguish students from each other and then students from teachers. Dante noticed that he wasn't the only one in the square of the assembly hall. Many other students had come here using different means, most using teleporters, as the authorization to this location was given freely since students would likely often be required to report here quickly. Dante noticed many from the spaceport when he came for the test, and he also saw many others. The Eternal Academy had hundreds of spaceports for receiving, sending, business, pleasure, and military functions. The spaceport Dante came in was far from the only one for new students. Of course, how many passed the initial tests and entered would not amount to even 5% of the total number, but he counted around 2,000 people at least. The crazy part was that more people were coming. As Dante surveyed the area, he noticed a bunch of pure human youths gesturing at him. They grouped up in a large bunch, numbering almost 50. As usual, they were separated from the other aliens and mixed-race humans who made up the bulk. Dante naturally walked up with a smile to the pure human group. Now that the troublesome Beatrice wasn't around, he was free to be more natural and less guarded. Of course, caution would not be discarded, but living like that 24/7 would shoot his stress levels to calamitous degrees. The pure humans made way for him and introduced themselves one by one. Most were in the elite batch, numbering around 46. Only 4 were like Dante, recruited into the unique batch. Among them, of course, was Louisa, who stood like a swan among a flock of ducks. The entire social group seemed to be orbiting around, gathering her attention. So, it was to no one's surprise that Dante got heavy and envious looks when Louisa brightened up at his appearance and began chatting with him in a friendly manner. After all, Dante was a pure human with natural superpowers like her. Not to mention, he was sort of a family friend since he was associated with Beatrice. Even though his status as a discovered pure human was lower than hers within the pure human ranks, it was offset by his overall backing. As such, Louisa did not treat him like a possible lackey, but as a sort of equal. However, her attitude was still there, nothing particularly rude or offensive, but just a slightly superior tone, like an intellectual talking to an average person. The others noticed this, and among other reasons, began to inquire on Dante's background in a seemingly harmless manner. Louisa seemed to have a playful expression on her face as she first revealed that he was recently found and brought here. Immediately, the attitude of many of the pure humans here changed, and while they were still willing to allow Dante into the group, they became less equal and more condescending in a polite way. Louisa let them make fools of themselves for a bit before casually adding that Beatrice found him and was tied to the Portinari family. Not only that, but his military rank was Vice Admiral of the 34th Fleet. The fellows were left speechless. Many felt extreme resentment towards Louisa. This was a fellow with a background no less than hers, and could be someone they would socially orbit around as well. However, due to her prank, the relationship had gone cold, and their futures with Dante as close friends were directly cut off. Dante too glanced at Louisa coldly, and her playful expression changed slightly. These fellows' unhappiness she could ignore, but Dante's was not so easy to brush over. However, whether it was the pure human elite youths or Louisa, neither made a move to apologize to Dante or act in a lower position. Yeah, his backing was superb, but their own was just one rank below, and in the case of Louisa, slightly higher. There was no need to bend their backs and fawn over anyone. As for their orbiting around Louisa, it was normal. Every social group had a core, and that core was usually the most handsome/beautiful person, the richest person, or the coolest person. Even if this person had a conflict, no one would necessarily kneel to them, but rather scoff and walk away. Dante was also a relatively skilled socialite, so he smiled and brushed off the earlier unpleasantness and began chatting with everyone normally. In the meantime, he assessed them and their behaviors as well as gathered information about them through their chat, which he logged to his AI. Soon, their chat was forced to come to an end when the announcement was made. It was time for the students to gather within the hall. At this time, the original 2,000 had swelled to almost 10,000 in number, while the number of pure humans reached about 200 in total. They were ushered into the hall in an organized manner and led to their respective seats. Yes, the seats too were separated by class, not racial or based on background, but purely the internal classification of the academy itself. Front row seats to the unique batch students, middle row for elite batch, and back row for the numerous normal batch. Not only that, but each class was separated into ranks according to whatever standard was tested in the entrance examination. There were about 28 unique batch students among the total number accepted this year, and out of their ranked 28 seats, Dante was slowly but surely led to the first one. Welp, there goes all plans of not attracting hatred. High profile it is then. Dante thought to himself.